Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Moderator, our distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, our friends and our enemies.
The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. And as Muslims, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us to respect our women and to protect our women. And then the only time a Muslim really gets real violent is when someone goes to molest his woman. We will kill you for our woman. I'm making it plain, yes. We will kill you for our woman. We believe that if the white man will do whatever is necessary to see that his woman gets respect and protection, then you and I will never be recognized as men until we stand up like men and place the same penalty over the head of anyone who puts his filthy hands out to put in the direction of our women.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam wa rasulullah wa ba'd. In the name of Allah, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His messenger, as to what follows. Family, friends, and foes, homies and haters, I welcome you all again, and thank you for joining me on the features. I receive you all with love and serenity and void of all hatred. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and mercy of Allah be upon all of you. So before I begin, I humbly ask you to please hit the like button and please share and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And also don't forget to support this channel on Patreon. Today, I want to talk about the reality of the Breonna Taylor situation and what we should be doing as Muslims and as black folk in this entire situation. I want to get into the reality of what happened and how we should look at it and what should be the next steps for us, in my personal opinion. Okay, so let's get right into it, inshallah. So I want to deal with a few issues regarding this case. The first being is, was this murder or manslaughter, was it actually race-based? You know, was Breonna Taylor killed because she was black, simply because she's black? The second thing I want to deal with was, what was their circumstances leading up to the shooting itself and the aftermath of the investigation and the trial, and what should we be doing, right, with regard to this entire situation. So in terms of the killing of Breonna Taylor itself, it wasn't race-based per se. The killing, when I mean the actual shooting of Breonna Taylor, right? She wasn't shot because she was a black woman, right? I just want to make that clear. And how we know this is because the circumstances leading up to her death was that the police, they had a warrant already out for her, right? So they were actually at the right address. They weren't in the wrong address. It's important to get the facts out first, because as Muslims, you know, we have to be just, we have to be fair in our assessment of things. We can't just look at something and just kind of go with what everybody else is saying. Because what happens when you do that, you start spreading lies, and the lies eventually become the truth. And black people are so used to people lying on us that doing a tit for tat on this level will cause much more harm than it would any good. So there was a warrant out for Breonna Taylor, and they were actually going to her house on a no-knock warrant based upon her ex-boyfriend receiving mail, right, at her house, right, and her ex-boyfriend being a drug dealer, right? So we want to get this out the way first. The police, they were actually at the correct house. right? However, right, even though I don't see the shooting itself as, you know, she was shot because she's black, I don't see it like that. The circumstances leading up to the actual investigation 100% was racism. It was racism, right? And the circumstances afterwards, after the investigation, yes, it was absolutely racism, right? And how do we know this? Well, what has been hidden, or this information like was kind of suppressed, was that the reason why they went after Breonna Taylor specifically under the guise of drugs, right? That wasn't the real reason, actually. It was because of, now get this, it was because of gentrification. That was the real reason why they were at Breonna Taylor's house. But of course they can't say, you know, they can't get a warrant to say we need to kick these Negroes out this house so we can gentrify this neighborhood. They can't do that. They have to trump up some charges so they can actually go in the house and try to get the owners on anything.
The question is, did we in fact allow a department other than the mayor's office
to give direction to the police department about where to do an investigation, not based on where the crime seemed to be, but instead based on this particular location?
They're talking about what you uncovered.
Mm-hmm. And it's true.
3 weeks ago, Breonna Taylor's case took an unexpected turn when her family's lawyer, Sam Aguiar, filed a new complaint alleging that Taylor's death was tied to a redevelopment program led by the mayor's office. Within days, the city's Metro Council led a bipartisan effort to demand answers from Mayor Greg Fisher himself.
I was shocked when I read the allegations, and I think Councilman Kramer was too.
All I can do is say that we want the information. There seems to be a strange set of circumstances that came together, and we need to find out why.
I don't know if I'd call it strange.
What word would you use?
Catastrophic.
On the night Breonna Taylor was killed, the Louisville Metro Police Department targeted 5 properties they believed to be connected to a larger drug operation. Taylor's apartment on Springfield Drive, a home on Muhammad Ali Boulevard, and 3 homes on a single block of Elliott Avenue, which are the focus of Aguiar's new complaint. It alleges that the LMPD went on a crusade to target people and homes on a small stretch of Elliott Avenue because the city was hoping to take over properties for a real estate development project there. And that LMPD did it by dedicating to the area a previously unknown police unit called Place-Based Investigations, or PBI, which was formed in late 2019.
I was not aware that there was a place-based police unit that was focusing on that area to do X, Y, or Z.
The PBI unit, they're the ones that get the occupants of this Elliott house every single time. And if your job as a unit is to go to the heaviest, most saturated criminal syndicate neighborhoods in Louisville that does not encompass Elliott Avenue. Let's put 2 and 2 together. Houses are being torn down. There's a city plan clearly to rebuild. And you've got one little trap house that you decide needs to go. This PBI was 6 plainclothes officers in undercover vehicles driving up and down the road all day long. I mean, it was targeted harassing policing. Getting to the point where you need to hit 5 houses with over 70 police officers in a single night, that's crazy. Let's see, I just got a text message. Press conference at Elliott at 4:30 today.
You saw that the mayor is going to do a counter press conference?
It's going to be his first time talking.
Thanks everybody for coming out here to Elliott Avenue. My reaction when I saw the assertions from Sam Aguiar about Elliott Avenue were I was dumbfounded to see the linkage of this initiative here of trying to rebuild this block with safe and affordable housing was somehow tied into a nefarious objective with Breonna Taylor's tragedy. So what we're trying to do in neighborhoods like Russell is regenerate without displacement. And that has been on the record for months. You guys all know about that. The main takeaway is this is a neighborhood that needs help. It's being developed by a guy that's been doing this for a long time.
The plans to redevelop Elliott Avenue are part of a multi-million-dollar initiative called Vision Russell. It consists of multiple projects to reshape the predominantly black West End, including demolishing the city's largest public housing complex, Beecher Terrace, and rebuilding it into mixed-income housing. LMPD says PBI focused on this street because of criminal activity, but it's unclear which metrics they used to choose Elliott Avenue over other crime-ridden blocks in the city. We reached out to the department, but haven't gotten a response. Meanwhile, public records show that since 2017, the city's land bank authority has acquired 22 properties here, or nearly 40% of the street. And it's in the process of foreclosing on 7 more. KG is a grassroots organizer who's lived in Louisville for the past 15 years. You wanted to meet here on this block. Why?
So this street used to be called Walnut Street. Historically, it was a place of Black Renaissance. After the Great Migration, all down Walnut Street, which is now named Muhammad Ali, there were single-owned houses, single-owned shops, and businesses owned by Black people.
Are any of those buildings still standing?
There's only one building still standing, and that's why we wanted to meet here. It's the River City Bank. At the time, it was the Mammoth Life Insurance. Every other building that was on this street has been torn down, and it was part of the urban renewal that happened in the 50s and 60s.
Today in Louisville, a lot of the Black community lives on the West End. That's also the center of one of the biggest redevelopment plans, as the city calls it, Vision Russell.
Absolutely.
What do you think of Vision Russell?
Honestly, this gentrification plan is just the newest stage in a long process. This has been going on for 90 years.
Were you surprised when you saw the allegations by Breonna Taylor's family's lawyer about gentrification maybe having something to do with what happened to her?
That didn't surprise me at all, for real. We know particularly when they're trying to push Black communities out of a place, over-policing and nuisance ordinances they step up and they ramp up those tactics. And we know that this is racial banishment, so there's nowhere to go but jail or the grave.
Public records show that from December through April, LMPD officers repeatedly hit 2424 Elliott Avenue, one of the properties targeted on the night of Breonna Taylor's death. They made arrests for drugs, firearms, or trafficking, and the homeowner was sent public nuisance notices. Eventually, he received an order to vacate. In June, he donated the property to the city for $1. So whatever the initial intentions behind PBI, their investigation on Elliott does appear to have helped the city acquire more property on the block. What's the relationship between your office, the Elliott Avenue revitalization efforts, and the Louisville Metro Police Department?
Their relationship with LMPD on that is such that if we are wanting a particular part of town to have better qualities for its neighbors, that's something that we're looking at from the Develop Louisville standpoint. LMPD then, independently of Develop Louisville, also has criminal investigations going on. In this particular case with Elliott Avenue, at 2424 Elliott Avenue, those two things happen to independently come together.
Sam Aguiar, the lawyer for Breonna Taylor's family, shared this project overview from, at the bottom it says, as of November 2019. In the project overview it says that the Office of Community Development, in partnership with the Louisville Metro Police Department, continue to explore crime reduction measures on Elliott Avenue with an emphasis on place-based crime prevention strategies. Why are the Office of Community Development and the Land Bank working with LMPD on crime reduction?
They would only be working together in terms of, here's an area where we have code violations, property that's not kept up, which oftentimes correlate with criminal activity here in Louisville and every city around the country.
In July, when the mayor's office released an updated version of the project overview for Elliott Avenue, there was one big difference. The project overview section is almost entirely identical, save for that sentence, which is not there. Why was that changed or omitted?
I can't remark on that. I'm not familiar with that.
Mayor Fisher initially tried to distance his office from PBI, but he since had to walk that back. Emails shared by his office show a direct correspondence between PBI and his staff on the status of 2424 Elliott Avenue shortly after Taylor's death. On April 8th of this year, Detective Kelly Hannah Goodlett, who is part of PBI, sent an email which is CC'd Joshua Watkins, who I believe is an advisor who works within your office, updating about 2424 Elliott and a third strike and the possibility of expediting a fourth strike. Why would PBI then in that case be CCing someone from your office?
Joshua works with PBI.
And also with your office?
He's a Metro employee.
According to Joshua Watkins' LinkedIn, he's a special projects advisor in the mayor's office. He never responded to a request for comment.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, so just let me track back so I can explain to you what's going on here. All right, for those of you who don't know gentrification or what the history of gentrification is, it's essentially pushing black people out of their own neighborhoods in order for white folk to usurp the property and the infrastructure of that land. And it's done through nefarious means and very dubious practices. Right, so they never use racist language or lingo. They haven't, put it this way, they haven't used racist language for at least the civil rights movement, right? So what they do is they use non-racist language in order to kick black and brown people out of their neighborhoods and say it's not racist, it's something else. For example, they'll say this is an urban renewal project or it's a revitalization project. And historically, this is code for kicking darker people out of their communities, right? This is called gentrification. How they do it is that the city or the local government will say now, okay, we need to revitalize this area because there's too much crime or whatnot. And instead of building community resources for that specific community, what they do is they chase them out by raising rents, by using these Gestapo tactics that the police do in these neighborhoods, always handing out warrants, no-knock warrants or whatnot in the neighborhood until they chase the people away and until eventually the city owns that property. Once the people are gone, right, then they do these so-called revitalization and urban renewal projects, right? Bill Clinton is probably the most famous gentrifier, right, in history, because he did the same thing in Harlem, right? And it's well known what he did there. So this is what's happening. So now the reason why Breonna Taylor fits into this is because her house was in that neighborhood, which was booked for gentrification. So where does Breonna Taylor fit in all of this? The whole point of this was to show that Breonna Taylor was always going to be targeted by PBI, place-based investigations, whether she was committing crimes or not. And she was not committing crimes. She was always going to be a target. Why? Because her home was in the neighborhood that was booked for urban renewal or revitalization, okay? Her home was in a gentrification place, right? And you see how this little buttermilk asparagus, mayonnaise, Yosemite Sam, Mayor Greg Fisher, how his face changed when they asked him about Joshua Watkins, the PBI advisor. You see how his face changed? Why did his face change? Because there is a clear-cut conflict of interest. That's why his face changed. He got caught. He got booked, you know? He got narked out. You see what I'm saying? He got caught red-handed dipping into the pot. Because how can Joshua Watkins, the PBI advisor, what is his business sending emails to both PBI and the mayor at the same time? Except to show the progress of the usurping of properties in the black community. This is why they had a no-knock warrant on Breonna Taylor's house. Because her ex-boyfriend was in fact a drug dealer. The cops already had her ex-boyfriend in custody. They're trying to create a link between Breonna Taylor and her ex-boyfriend as an excuse to go into her house on a no-knock warrant. But they did not count on her current boyfriend being inside the house. So after they shot her, they knew they done messed up. They understood they messed up because they weren't intending on killing Breonna Taylor. You got me? So what was the next step? They do what these white supremacists do, and they try to cop a deal with her ex-boyfriend.
A Louisville lawyer who's representing Breonna Taylor's family said her ex-boyfriend was offered a plea deal that would require him to claim Taylor was involved in a drug ring. The newly uncovered documents show the plea deal prosecutors offered Jamarcus Glover in July. They listed Taylor as a co-defendant in illegal activities leading up to April 22nd, weeks after her death. The documents say Taylor's address was a place where Glover picked up mailed packages and kept some of his money. Glover turned down the deal and said Taylor had no involvement.
Now you see how these wicked devils are? These evil shayateen? This woman, she cannot defend herself, okay? They came into her house, shot and killed her. But that wasn't enough for them. In order to free themselves from their own guilt, they tried to set up this innocent, dead woman on drug charges, going to her ex-boyfriend and offering him a plea deal. And black people know well too much about these plea deals. Whether you are innocent or whether you're guilty, whether you've done nothing or whether you've done something, they always try to leverage these devilish plea deals against other black people all the time. They will arrest you, throw you in jail, and here comes the public defender telling you to take a plea. You only do 60 days. Even if you're innocent of any crimes, they want you to take these plea deals. And once you've done that, then you've essentially admitted guilt, and that's what they're trying to do to an innocent, dead black woman, knowing full and well that she's innocent. So after this strong black man refused this plea deal, now imagine, he can get out now. He can get out early. All he has to do is say, yeah, you know, Breonna, you know, she's dead. She can't answer for herself. It's easy for him. It's an easy thing for him to say, yeah, she was involved. And nobody can say anything because she's dead already. But he refused to do that. And some of us Muslims can't even keep our mouths shut against another Muslim. And that's why we get looked at like chumps. About the aftermath now, as you can see, the lead up to Breonna Taylor's death was absolutely, based in racism. But her death itself wasn't racist. They didn't just kill her because she's black. They killed her because they're stupid, okay? They're dumb, right? And they got caught, right? And about the aftermath now, right? As you can see, when these cops, got away with essentially murder. And remember, her parents, they wanted a second-degree manslaughter, but that was too much for them. Even second-degree manslaughter was too much for these people. Okay, they couldn't even do that, right? They had to essentially say that what these police, what the one police officer is guilty of is murdering Wall and Paint. But remember, these people, they knew what the ruling was going to be even before the protest. They knew, because they were preparing for the protests. You know, they were blocking up streets, boarding up walls, telling the police officers that you have to work overtime and no days off. And they were prepared. And that's the difference between us and them. You see, they prepare for us. They calculate our reactions to their injustice, and they prepare for that. So congratulations, Black people. After fighting numerous wars and marching in countless protests and walk-ins and sit-ins and sing-ins and half a century of civil rights movement, you've finally gotten justice for your neighbor's paint and drywall. Congratulations. And what I'm saying is that protest, how many protests are we going to do to realize that these protests, they just simply don't work? It's not a strategy. It's not a plan. It's a reaction to injustice. They react, we react while they prepare. We are the ones who need to prepare. We cannot ask our open enemies to slow down for us. And so I'll leave you with this. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in the Quran, He says, وَإِذَا الْمَعُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. And وَإِذَا الْمَعُودَةُ, you know what al-ma'uda is in the Arabic language? Okay, back in the time before Islam, you know, in Arabia, the Arabs, they had this practice of burying their daughters. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He put in the Quran, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ. And when the girl who was buried alive is questioned, these girls who were buried alive, why were they being buried alive? It's because it was the practice of the pre-Islamic Arabs to bury their daughters alive if they had a daughter before they had a son. It was shameful for them to have a daughter before they had a son. They have to have a son first, then a daughter. If they had a daughter, they would bury that girl alive. Pre-Islamic Arabs were doing this. And then Allah, He asks, who? That girl on Yawm al-Qiyamah, on the Day of Judgment. What does He ask her? بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. For what crime was she killed? These people were not Muslim, and Allah is so just. He brings justice whether or not you are Muslim. It doesn't make a difference. You will have justice. بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. So I ask the same question about Breonna Taylor. بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. For what crime was she killed? For what crime? How many of our Black daughters have been killed? And our Black sons have been killed for no reason by this white supremacist authority. How many of them? And if you think that the solution to these problems, to march in the streets with picket signs with Black Lives Matter, my brothers and sisters, I will tell you, white supremacy, they're not afraid of a picket sign or a march. You're not scaring them. The only thing they do, and I promise you they're going to do this. They're going to talk about police reform, okay? They might even put in some new laws for police reform. They're going to talk about changing the system. They're going to bring in new laws into, and legislate new laws to, to basically get rid of this racism, and nothing will change. Nothing will change. After the Watts riots, what was the call? It was police reform and civil rights. After Rodney King, what was the call? Police reform and civil rights. After George Floyd, police reform, civil rights. After Breonna Taylor, police reform, civil rights. Well, wait a minute. How are you begging your enemy for rights? Did this enemy beg Britain for their rights when they wanted to separate from Britain over taxes? We pay taxes. And what do we get? We don't get revitalization in our communities. We get kicked out of our communities. And they call it revitalization. So we need real solutions for real problems. And as I said before, in my humble opinion, Black people need to be like this and unite, just like every other community does. There is a concerted effort to keep Blacks divided, and Muslims as well. And I showed you that in my previous videos, how the government spends money on this. They spend time and training and resources on this. You are in a war, and you're fighting this war with picket signs and say her name while they are prepared for you in the streets with police, trained Ku Klux Klan. This is what they prepared for you. And you prepare to pick a sign, you have to stop that. My humble opinion, you have to stop that. It's not to put down the protesters. I'm in the struggle with you, but I've seen this so many times, and I'm telling you, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. We need a different approach. Subhanaka bihamdik wa shada la ant wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. I came to you in love and serenity. I leave you in love and serenity. Peace be upon you all. Please don't forget to subscribe and like and share, and please support me on Patreon. As you know, I'm kind of the lone voice amongst the Muslims and the Salafis who's talking about this stuff. So your support is very much appreciated.
We respect them, but we want them to respect us. We think that the law should respect the Negro community. The law should protect the Negro community. The law should approach the Negro community with intelligence if it expects the Negro community to react intelligently.